Oral communication and genre-based approach in Colombian English classroom was a research article published on the Colombian Applied Linguistics Journal in 2012. The basis of this article is to promote a new technique in oral communication, to develop skills and improve them. The general idea was teaching language as social and also the learning as a goal-oriented process by a teacher or by an autonomous learner. In this case, the research was led to English learners in basic and primary school. First of all, we need to contextualize a Colombian English classroom. In first case, we have learning English as structural knowledge. So, English is just a structure. The first thing you learn is grammar features. So, these teaching sequences reverse the logical order of communication because they start from a grammar feature rather than from a communicative purpose to be achieved using grammar as a resource. You can use grammar as a resource that supports your presentations, your speech, your use of the language. But in this case, you're using grammar as the base. The second thing is a realistic usage of the language. We are not used to use English in real context. We are asked to prepare presentations, role plays, or micro dialogues based on a pattern, based on a textual pattern. That's the third item. We are so used to imitate textual patterns. We are given a textbook, and in base of that, we construct a new dialogue, just changing the vocabulary or the purpose or maybe the context, but you are using the same structure and the same pragmatical use. The fourth item is pursuing accurate grammar use rather than contributing content. So language is not in use. We are just preparing or giving oral interactions in unrealistic contexts and with no content. You are just repeating and focusing our speech in grammar features. In those bases, the technique of genre-based approach is based or is found on. The genre-based approach focuses on three stages. The first of them is social language in use. Learners need to understand that language is social. So you need to be aware of the context you're in and all the stages of use of a language. In the second stage, again, teaching English in real context. We need to teach English creating real context, real environments, real interactions, not just focusing on grammar, but pursuing a pragmatical goal or an objective that increase our level of management of the language, but in real context. And the third one is responses to cultural context. We need to know that language involves a culture, involves a group of people with different characteristics, with different ways of thinking, and all the stuff. So, our English curriculum found upon a framework of genre and texts. In this case, genre means cultural context. If we know the cultural context we are talking about, we are expressing, we're gonna have a social language in use. And the texts are the sources for this technique in stages of language of languages usage. We are recopiling different sources of information, of characteristics of the language, cultural information, and yeah, that things. So the students' varied knowledge empower the use of language as a functional and transformational system of communication, not just a bunch of grammar rules. What are the features of GBA in English teaching? We have two different things. A shared experience, which means interactions with the support of the teacher evolving to meaningful oral interpersonal communication. We are joining the knowledge of a teacher and the new things that the learner is discovering, and we combine them in a shared experience. In the second part, we have meaningful oral interpersonal communication, which means also that we are developing the language not just in cases of grammar rules following or oral presentations, but we are communicating with others using this technique, obviously. So, we have two different characteristics of this technique. Language as system and communicative context. When we apply this technique, we are learning the language, in this case English, as a system with the grammar rules and everything that is technical. And communicative context. We are learning how to handle or use the language in a communicative context, communicating with our partners, with native speakers if we have the possibility. And in the second stage, we have visible pedagogy. The teacher is concerned about the learner's needs. So the teacher is working to improve those needs and achieve a language use with communicative value. So the technique has a special process, a teaching-learning cycle. This cycle is divided into different steps. So the first step is to setting the context and building feel. We need to provide a genre or a cultural context based on the material or the sources of information that we're going to use. Second, we are going to deconstruction, which means learn rhetorical structure and lexicogrammatical resources. We are combining grammar features with structures that are implied into the text. The third step is create a new text belonging in the same genre, which combines into the joint construction step. The idea is to create a new text with the same structure of the first material we used. And in the last one, independent construction is creating an independent text apart from the model text. We recover certain characteristics of the genre and we are taking those characteristics to create something new, to develop a new context, a new communicative space, and everything. So we have an experience from the research that is summarizing what is the GBA in real context. So the first step was setting a context and building a field. So in this case, in this example, we have buy food items in a store. That's the genre. That's the social and cultural context of the exercise. And the text is simple exchanges to buy food items in a store. In the part of the construction we are checking vocabulary related to food items, or buying also, samples of conversation regarding the context. In this step we introduce the listening part, the listening skills development, and also we have micro dialogues using model phrases. So we are taking the samples of conversation and using them in a micro dialogue. Then we join the construction. We prepare a new dialogue to buy a list of ingredients needed for a special dish. So we are preparing us for the last step, independent construction. And also the students evaluate their performances. You're checking what are the mistakes, what are the new things, what are the model phrases that you're using. And in the last step, independent construction, we recreate a small street market using the generating context. We are creating a different context but with the same genre. We are buying food items in a store, but not in a store, in a street market. So, the purposes, the results and goals of GBA applied in real context that were gathered with the experience we saw before, and with the theoretical foundation, we have these three results and goals. The first one is awareness of how language works, means that we have control of actual language use. If we are aware how the language works in real contexts, in real communicative frameworks, we know how to control the language ourselves. The second thing is to improve the use of lexicogrammatical resources. We are not leaving apart the grammar features, we are combining them with a real context and learning lexicogrammatical sources. And the third one is how oral communication responds to specific needs and situations. Oral communication is in every language we are learning. But in English, we have to combine them with grammar, with the system, and create and being involved in real contexts. So this GBA technique is really useful to learn how to manage a language. So that's